So what is working best as everybody is trying to say, how do we bridge people? How do we help them take those steps? What's working best for you?
Sure. One of the things that one of our team members did that I thought was super creative and smart is when you think about the digital landscape, it's often a one-to-many environment, and the many are often people we don't know, right? They're just random viewers on YouTube, and if they're random viewers on YouTube, it's very difficult to engage them, which is exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that we started doing maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, was when we get somebody that follows us on Instagram, for example, we immediately reach out to that person individually, one-to-one, and ask them a simple question: how can we be praying for you? And that's an incredible way to bridge that discipleship gap, because now we're forming a one-to-one relationship from a one-to-many environment. And it's not a whole lot different than like church as a whole, right? I mean, you think about it, if somebody walks in a church building, especially a really large church building, and they sit in the audience and they listen to a pastor preaching on stage, and then they get up and walk out, we don't actually know who that person is either. And there's not a whole lot of difference there, except that in the online environment, I can't just like even stop somebody at the door, or I can't turn around and go, hey, I don't know if we've met before. Like, I don't have that type of engagement. But as soon as they follow us or subscribe or comment, we do have that type of engagement. And so that's one of the things that we've started doing now is when somebody follows us on one of our channels, we'll immediately message them and ask how we can pray. And then the other thing that we'll do is ask people to comment regardless of what channel it's on. We're trying to always engage with those comments and create relationships and give people opportunities for next steps. So one more example is recently we started using a tool on Instagram specifically that when we post a short clip of a sermon, which is going to be 30 to 90 seconds, it's a very good way to capture somebody, but often we want to get them to go watch the whole sermon. The tricky thing with a platform like Instagram is you can't just link to the other sermon, but we're using a tool where if they comment a particular keyword, so in the notes we'll say, hey, if you want to see the full message or you want to have more context for this, just comment, more, or comment lost, or comment, church, or whatever the keyword is. And then when they do that, the system will automatically not email them, but direct message them a full link to the sermon. And so then they can engage that way. Then we can reply to them in that direct message. And so those are like a few little hacks on the digital engagement side that actually allow us to form a one-to-one relationship from what's typically a one-to-many environment.
Awesome. Thank you. Ryan, anything to add?
Measuring discipleship is often tricky in any environment, whether it's a four-dimensional one or a digital one. But we all, as church leaders, do our best to try to get our fingers on the pulse of what God might be doing and what is being effective in disciple making. I think every church has, for the most part, not just, we would all say, I hope, every step matters. That every 10 minutes, every 2 minutes, every engagement matters on some level, and we don't know where that is in the process of planting and watering and growing, but we're just trying to do our part. One of the things that is measurable is next steps taken. And so there's a couple of things that we've done to try to better capture our digital audience, meaning we offer a few resources every year, a devotional, a 40-day devotional. And every time we do that, we're trying to get them to give us their information as well. This is not rocket science. This would be very ClickFunnels sales type of strategy. Even though we're not selling anything, we give away free resources directly pointed at our digital audience. And we want them, in order to get that resource, you have to tell us who they are. Jay could tell you exactly, from an email moving from a one-to-many to a one-to-one, we now have a name, an email, and a relationship established with a person. The number of those captures that we've had over the last 18 months has been tens of thousands. We're talking 30, 40,000 emails in 12 months, right? That we did not previously have. And so these are not people who were normally checking their kids in at the Church of 1122, or these are tens of thousands of emails and names that we can be praying for, that we can be inviting into next steps. We saw that play out. If it's 40,000, at some point it comes down to an issue of obedience in the individual. And so I don't want to overstate the number, but we were able, by God's grace, to baptize more than 1,000 people, like 1,600 people last May, made a profession of faith. I want to say the number of those people who came and got baptized with us that were not from North Florida, that primarily engaged with us online, was like in the 80s. Like 80-something people chose to come from out of town, fly into town. That may be a little off, so don't quote me.
No, it's almost 100. It was almost 100. It might have actually been a little bit more than that. Yeah.
And so that's not nothing. That's something. And so praise God for that. And then if you look at from a giving standpoint, get our people who say, I primarily attend online, when they designate their campus or their location, at any given time, it is our second or third largest campus, if we counted it that way, in regards to financial giving. And so those are two measurements right there that tell me people are more than anonymous engagers, that they are participators in the mission, vision, and value of 1122. And as best we can, like Jay said, through one-on-one engagement, we try to better understand where they fall on that engaged time frame, right? So last time we talked, we think about digital in 4 different ways. There are people who are far from God. We try to put tools in our people's hands digitally that they can share those tools with people that they know who are far from God, to help them take steps toward a relationship with Jesus, right? We try to make it easy to share content and to share an invite digitally, right? Then there's people who would say 1122 is their home church. They live in North Florida or in our region, but for whatever reason, they can't attend regularly locally, whether that's a physical health reason or that's a work reason, but they would say 1122 is their home. The third is people who we're additional content in their Christian walk. They love Pastor Joby. They love just the 1122, what God's doing here, but they have a home church and they're engaged in that home church. Praise God, we can serve them in that way. We don't spend a ton of time focused on that lane as much as we're happy to serve the body, right? And then the fourth would be somebody who doesn't live in our region, that does not have a local church and considers 1122 home. And that's where we spend a lot of time working on with individuals. If they want to take next steps with us, they will be in a Zoom with a pastor. They will be in a one-on-one conversation with somebody to help them discern and take the next steps. And so we've just chosen to put 1122's financial resources in that direction. And I would say that if you want to be effective in any disciple-making space, but primarily digitally, you got to put your money where your mouth is. And you've got to put your human resources, your disciple makers, on disciple making. So I could go on and on and on. But those two things, baptism, people showing up in physical for baptism, and the number of people that say, I give online, I attend online, and they give regularly or give anything, is significant. And so those are two measurables that are not all-encompassing of discipleship, but they're certainly not nothing.
That is awesome and well said, both of you. So on the giving, a lot of churches have kind of, Chris Hodges calls it a legacy team or other things, where they take their in-person big givers and say, let us just dream aloud with you, which ends up, for many of them ponying up and say, well, I can make that happen faster, Pastor, or whatever. Do you do that at all with your online larger givers who identify you as this is an online campus person?
Yes, we do. It's not necessarily larger givers, but it would be as much about consistency as it would amount. That we do what we call online vision. We do vision summits. And this is something we do for our church anyway in Jacksonville physically. But it's an environment that Pastor Joby leads. He meets with these people via Zoom. It is a programmed environment. We do it at nighttime. It goes all the way to like 11 or 12 o'clock at night because it's based on Mountain and Central time. And so it's a full on programmed. Jay, what's the total runtime on that? Probably 4 hours to 6 hours.
Yeah, it's probably 2.5 hours per day. We do 2 days. So
yeah, so 4 to 5 hours of program time with Pastor Joby and the people who are aligning their hearts with the mission and vision of 1122 in that way. We do that twice a year.
So your online vision summit is a lot more than just a casting the vision in half an hour, 45 minutes. This sounds like it's training in generosity. Can you unpack it a little bit?
Yeah, it's a discipleship environment. And so we spend time sharing testimony where people talk about God's faithfulness in their life and how God has moved in their life through the ministry of 1122, and we encourage each other in that way. Everybody who attends shares in that way, and so it's they will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. It's giving testimony of God's faithfulness. We do that together. There's worship and singing, even though it's online. We do acoustic set worship and singing. There's devotional materials that goes out beforehand and that is discussed during it, meaning a pre-written devotional that you work through with questions that we discuss as a part of that time. And then there is a session of vision, what we would say sharing vision as direction, meaning this is where we are and this is where God's leading us in the next season, and an opportunity for them to debrief what they've heard and talk about what they're excited about and what next steps God might be leading them to take in relation to where God's leading us as a church. So all that happens over 5 hours. We do vision summits in person in Jacksonville or South Georgia. We do 20 a year. They're overnight. They're overnight things. And we've scaled what we do overnight across 2 days into 5 hours online. And it's been very engaging and very well done. And it's discipleship. I mean, that's just what it is.
Wow. Is this a small group environment, like limited to 12 people or something like that?
Limited to however many boxes we can have on Zoom at any given time. I think it's 24 is the number or something like that.
that's about what we do. Because at some point we're having people engage in conversation, so everybody on there is sharing at some point, so the group can't be too big, otherwise they can't share.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible opportunity because the stories, honestly, the first time we did it, it blew me away because I was a little skeptical that it was going to work on Zoom, but I thought, well, we'll try it, see what happens. And it was amazing because we're hearing stories from all over the country, all over the world. In fact, there was a guy, overseas one time that was on one of these things in a military situation, and the stories they're sharing of the impact that the church has made, where they're at, and then talking about what discipleship looks like in their lives and what their spiritual growth has been. It's pretty powerful. And Pastor Joby, I mean, he puts in the work because he's spending a lot of time casting vision and kind of sharing, hey, here's what we're doing in the future. He always says we share true rumors because he can't remember what he's supposed to keep secret and what he's not. And it's true. He just kind of says, hey, here's what I know right now. And it's basically the same stuff we share around the executive table. There's not a lot of secrets, and people love it because they feel like they're connected because they are. And that keeps rolling into ongoing relationships in live chat online, conversations and comments, all that kind of stuff. So it takes it and puts a face to relationships versus just, random comments on the internet.
Wow.